So, what are addictions really? Basically, an addiction is anything that you use to escape either your mind, your emotions, life in general. Addictions are coping mechanisms, and they can come in all kinds of forms. They are sneaky. There's people who are getting addicted to eating healthy right now. There is a huge push for trying to become healthy and well. Everyone is very sick. Everyone is very either mentally, emotionally sick, physically sick, spiritually sick. There's a lot of just lack of wellness right now. And so people are searching for anything to fill a void. And the thing with that, like the healthy eating, for example, there's a term for it. It's called orthorexia, where people are becoming so obsessed with health and wellness that they are consumed by it. People will go to the gym. If you're at the gym for hours on end, if you're stuck on a machine or going for a run for hours, it's probably not healthy. In fact, like with the running thing, marathon runners is, I kind of get the feeling that it's probably just an addiction and it's probably just a way to cope or escape. And I mean, too much of anything can be bad. And by bad, I mean something that is destructive. But then again, I guess at the end of the day, nothing really is good or bad. Things just are until we assign that label to it. But I like to believe that if something is destructive to your well-being, it's probably bad. And that becomes kind of tricky with things that you might not think of as self-destructive, like eating good, working out. Even reading can be an addiction. I'll tell you a little something about myself. I've been through plenty of self-abusive addictions. I've had alcohol and substance abuse issues, and I have healed from that. But I have little things that sneak in other ways, and I've got to catch myself. I have a tendency to get caught up in studying and reading and researching. We all know at this point in day and age that social media can be an addiction, and it's very addicting. Like, that's no joke. People are really getting stuck on there. I'm guilty of it too. Like, I had to take over a month just totally off of social media because it sucks you in. And before you know it, hours have gone by and you've done what? Scrolled. I mean, so of course there's the really bad addictions like drugs, alcohol, cigarettes. And just so often, most of those kinds of addictions are based in pain and a lack of self-worth. So people don't think they're worthy. They were told as kids all kinds of terrible things, or they were bullied, And as children, you don't have a way to cope with it. You don't know how to deal with it. And so when someone says something to you or about you, you take it very personally, and then that stays in your body because you don't know how to work through it. You don't know how to let it flow through you, and it gets stuck in you. And so a lot of these things from childhood wind up turning into physical addictions, or they turn into like physical health issues. And the best way to deal with all of that, you don't necessarily even have to know what triggered it in your past. You don't have to go back to that traumatic moment. You just have to recognize it in the now as it's coming up. So I'm sure everybody who drinks or uses drugs and smokes cigarettes, you know it's not good for you, right? And so they just choose to ignore that because it's easier to abuse yourself than to deal with the pain of somebody else abusing you. But the more that you cover it up, the more that you suppress it, it creates depression. You're depressing those emotions. Well, emotions are a natural part of being human. We are human beings. That means we're supposed to be in the moment. We aren't human doings. We aren't human thinkings. We're human beings. And so we have to learn how to be with ourselves. There was an experiment done, and I can't remember when. They put, I want to say 30 people into a room, one at a time, like 15 men, 15 women, or something like that. Don't hold me to the numbers. And they were hooked up to like an electroshock, so they could hit a button. They were only in there for 15 minutes alone by themselves with their own thoughts. And if they couldn't deal with their own thoughts, they could shock themselves. And quite a large number of them shocked themselves, like 30% of the women or something like that, and like 60 or 70% of the men. And so what does that tell us? People are terrified to be alone with their own thoughts, and they're doing anything and everything they can to run away, escape it, with anything. Just get me out of myself. But we can't escape ourselves. You have to learn how to just be yourself. And once you start really learning this kind of stuff, it's not so scary. It's really not. And once you start to see how much better you feel when you're not using substances, you have no desire to go back. And those substances, that drive to use or distract and, evade yourself, that drive really dissipates. The more you heal, the more you become present, and the more you really learn to appreciate what you have in your life and yourself. Self-worth is huge, and not enough of us have it. I've been there. And so with my coaching package, I really like to get into the deeper parts of worthiness with my clients, because it's so fundamental It's so fundamental that we learn to appreciate ourselves, because you're the only one that lives in your body. You can't escape yourself. Why make it miserable? Why exist in a life that you hate and despise simply because you don't know any other way? Well, I'm here to teach you some other ways. And a good way to work on that worthiness, that self-worth, is to literally just say out loud, I am worthy. I am worthy. Look in the mirror and do it. Look into your eyes. Look into your own eyes and tell yourself, I am worthy. I love you and I am worthy. It's awkward at first, but when you do it enough, you start to feel different. It starts to warm your heart a little bit. You start to shift little by little. This is not about big dramatic changes. I know the past was big and dramatic and scary, and you have to do drastic things to get away. But the little tweaks are where the biggest, most profound changes come from. So just start with something like that. Or write it too. Write it down. Just, I am worthy, over and over and over again. Use up a whole page of paper and write, I am worthy, I am worthy, I am worthy. Just say it out loud. Because when you speak things out loud, it resonates and it has a frequency. It's even more powerful than thinking it in your mind. And so I will leave you with that as your first tip on your way to relieving those addictive tendencies.